at Hassel in Sydney, where we've gathered a group of industry leaders from the landscape architecture, building and design community to judge some of the top landscape designs for the year in Victoria and Tasmania. This is a masterclass in landscape architecture. It shows you what happens when you are deliberate, when you care for landscape, when you craft it. There is such a richness in Australian landscape, and this episode, Victoria and Tasmania, proves it, but we see it throughout Australia. An Australian landscape that has come of age.
I'm really inspired by the projects that we're looking at today, and there's a really very robust discussion going on about what the ingredients are that makes a great landscape. Within this episode, we've probably got both the smallest project that we've seen in the entire series, but also the most global, which is a real demonstration of how broad landscape architecture can be.
Leading the judging are Wes Fleming of Fleming Nurseries and Reno Brindisi of Iguazini.
There's always passionate views with the people around the table. We find that even having industry colleagues, whether it be competitors and so forth, that makes it very interesting as well. But honestly, getting to know the new suppliers to the projects has been a good thing as well.
They're a great bunch of people, and the diverse skills that they bring to the table really adds weight to the quality of the awards.
Sarah Padgett-Kersgaard of the Australian Institute of Landscape Architects loved this unassuming, community-minded project.
Well, the scope of landscape architecture is so broad, and here's a project that shows the basic need of having a node, a place to wait, rest and reflect. It's a space for individuals and it's a space for small groups, and in that way it's really delightful.
The director wouldn't let me duck this next pun, so how's this pad? So Ed, how did this project come about?
2018 is the bicentenary year of the Royal Tasmanian Botanical Gardens. To celebrate this milestone, the Gardens wanted to do a major project. They decided to invite landscape architects to come up with a different design of what this space could be. The Lily Pond is the most visited site of the gardens, and they wanted it to be visual, exciting, something that people of all ages could engage with. So this top deck was designed to hold up to 75 people. Events happen here like weddings, we have performances tonight, we're having an auction happening here, so Great. It's very like a really, really dynamic space.
So this is not the first anniversary project at the Botanic Gardens?
No, it's not. If you just look down the stairs, you'll see the anniversary arch, which was built 100 years ago.
And I believe there's a social connection for you there?
Yeah, there is. My grandfather was the site foreman who was involved in building the 100-year arch.
Dusk reveals a whole other side to this project, one that sits beautifully in its surroundings but doesn't outshine the gardens. This is a lovely way for the Botanic Gardens to celebrate their 200th birthday. I wonder what they'll do for their 300th.
We're judging some of the top landscape architecture projects for the year in Victoria and Tasmania.
Absolutely grand on scale in some, and some are quite small, but still very, very interesting.
It's very diverse. It's a little bit different to others we've judged. There's a little bit more residential, a little bit more domestic gardens here in Victoria. The standard is outstanding.
This multifaceted residential project was admired by John Hazelwood of Hassel and Mark Chapman of Compan.
Number 5 is a great formal space. I think they've done a great job in being able to create an environment where they've managed the weather elements with the stone walls and created a space that you would feel comfortable in to come and spend some time, read a book, have a glass of wine.
Fiona's really pushing the edge on what you can do with native planting. It's contextual, it couldn't be anywhere else. It's low, wind-swept, ideal obviously for the entertaining that it's used for. At its heart is a desire to conserve that coastal ecology, but not just to conserve it, to celebrate it, use it in different ways, and explore ways that landscape architects broadly can use those particular species.
Coastal sites come with their own unique challenges for landscape architects and designers. Hi Fiona.
Hello Sharon.
Wow, this is amazing.
Thank you.
The first thing you notice is this incredible view.
Yes, it is a really beautiful view, and I think it's because we sit up very high on this old tertiary dune that we have really lovely views over Port Phillip Bay to the north and also over Bass Strait to the south. It also means that it can be a very sort of windy situation, and that's really why we've created this terrace and these limestone walls that give us a lot of protection from the southwesterly winds, but they also I guess hide the view of the cars which end up in that sort of arrival forecourt. This is the other living space I wanted to show you, Sharon, and this is...
Yeah, it's really quite different to the front, isn't it?
It is very different. I guess this is a much more sort of intimate space. I've used a lot of large prune shrubs and trees in this space rather than just having a big sort of open courtyard.
There's no lawn, Fiona?
No, there's no lawn. I think that's probably one of the big point of differences with a lot of the gardens and that I design, and particularly this one. We didn't want the maintenance that a lawn requires. This gravel is a fabulous surface because it gives you a seamlessness between open areas and planted areas.
As you move further through the garden, it seems less and less designed.
That's right, and that's about creating a connection with the broader landscape and the national park, which is outside our back gate.
This garden walks a perfectly fine line between being a formal space and a wild one, and it demonstrates that great design can sit lightly in its landscape.
Villawood Properties were involved in bringing this project to life, so Rory Costello sat out of the discussion. Greg Cook of Gosford Quarries admired the project for providing a vast communal space as part of a new housing development.
It's a large-scale project, and the landscaping's been designed to connect the community or build a community. With a new subdivision, you don't have a community, there is no community. But this landscaping has an oval, it has connectability, it has bike paths, and once it's all finished, you'll have about 15 kilometres of riding.
This project shows how important good landscape architecture is when creating our new communities. Landscape architects seem to work at such diverse scales. How do you even begin to approach a project that's so big?
Well, you have to work with a team of other professionals. So there's civil engineers, planners, hydrologists, botanists, ecologists, a whole range of people that help us all as a team understand what the constraints are on the land, what the opportunities are.
So it's great that you've been able to keep all this natural wetland.
Yeah, well, it's actually not natural, Sharon. It's fully constructed wetland. So this was all cow paddock before we started, and this is here to make sure that we clean up the water that runs off the roads and the roofs that are part of urban development.
Landscaping is really important because it's the window to your new community. When we create a new community, we want people to be proud to live where they are, and we want the kids to come out and be really active, enjoy the open space, whether it's in the bicycle paths, whether it's in the wetlands, whether it's in the ovals or the playgrounds. We just want kids to be active.
It's a really great opportunity to really sweat the detail and get really interesting places for kids to play, really interesting sequences so they can move from one piece of equipment to the other, from the flying fox to the swing, then the slide. And then we're designing other things for parents so that we create really comfortable seating spaces where parents can keep an eye on Junior, you know, make sure they don't eat too much sand and all that sort of thing. We love doing playgrounds because you basically get to be a kid again. Who'd have thought?
We're judging some of the top landscape architecture projects for the year in Victoria and Tasmania.
In this series, we're ultimately looking for the best landscape architecture project in Australia this year. So at the end of the series, we'll have a national best of the best, where we'll take today's winner, along with the other winners from each of the states, who will be up against some of the judges' favourites.
Matt Hicks of Light Project and Rory Costello of Villawood Properties admired the subtlety of this well-known inner-city retreat.
To build a hanging garden on top of a concrete structure is quite a feat, and to make it look like it is a garden on natural ground, and the versatility of it, the different displays they have there, it just works well with the public, and I think the public seem to love it.
It's a fantastic escape from the hard edges of the gallery and also the city. And it's a place where you can go and sit and contemplate, and you feel like you're in a garden that maybe more you'd expect in a lovely suburban or inner suburban property.
Hortus conclusus, the secret garden. This is a beautiful example of an urban oasis, smack bang in the middle of Melbourne. So Ewan, 50 years ago, we'd be walking into a back paddock at the back of the gallery.
Yep, the building was finished in 1968. This is a roof deck garden, and it really was just an empty space at the beginning. It was re-landscaped in the 90s to become more of a formal sculpture garden, and then we re-master planned the garden over the last few years to open it up so that we could run like an annual architecture competition.
The competition?
Yeah. This white fencing system is the project that won our annual architecture competition. It's called Garden Wall. It reimagines the garden as a set of rooms and pathways. So it's like a maze with these sort of intimate spaces that reframes the artworks.
And it's only temporary?
Yeah, it's up for 6 months, and we do this every year. It's quite an ambitious program, but it's a really important one. The public know that when they come here and visit the garden, they're always going to find something different.
Claire, this reminds me more of a domestic garden than it does a public open space.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that's really a measure of its success. So for us, it's really about inviting people in, getting them to feel comfortable and creating intimate public spaces.
I think you've done it beautifully just by looking at the amount of people that are here this morning. It's amazing. So you even collaborated with the chef of the garden restaurant.
That's right, with Nuno Gabriel, and that was a great collaboration, and with Andrew Barton. So we're really trying to bring the herbs in that they can use in their kitchen garden.
It's amazing. It's just another extension of the domestic garden we talk about here.
Yeah, and I think that for the gallery is really important. We want people to visit here every day, and we want them to be able to come to these massive scale events.
This is design thinking, answering to many masters. A wonderfully intimate space, yet catering for 300,000 people to stomp through every year. What do you reckon?
And now the two projects that will represent Victoria and Tasmania in the National Best of the Best final later in the series. Wes Fleming and Reno Brindisi adored this family-oriented property on the southern coast of Victoria.
I want to roll around on that grass with my kids. It's a sort of backyard that you could spend hours in, honestly. Weekends, entertaining friends. It's got everything that makes for a magical garden.
It's a garden that is so welcoming. As soon as you walk in the gate, it just gives you pause. I'm angling now to get an invite down for a barbecue, or I can take my kids down to experience it too. One of the challenges of landscape architecture is its huge diversity. From multi-million-dollar public projects to deeply personal private spaces. So where do you begin? Your own personal garden. When you were designing this, what was the one crucial element you wanted to make sure was in the garden?
Family, heart and soul, family space, places for kids to play.
But that doesn't just happen naturally, does it?
No, it's very intentional. You've really got to work to make something look underworked. So we introduced some friends of ours that were landscape architects, collaborating with our building architect, and together we all came up with what we've got here today.
We've just come through the wild kiddie area, which I love, but now look at this structured pathway as we get closer to the house. It's amazing.
Yes, I had the idea of running a very straight and solid path to the front door, and our landscape architects helped us develop this idea to make it more of a journey.
The plants are amazing. I know it's an award-winning planted garden, but they look like they've been here forever.
Yes, well, that's part of the idea, to make it not look like it's too structured and not overly landscaped, which is often what happens.
The way that the house and the garden fit seamlessly together is just, it's amazing that there's no boundaries.
No. Having a significant tree like this one definitely helps do that. It links the space, with vegetation. There's a lovely story behind it, actually. Our landscape architect suggested we had this deciduous tree here. I was about to go and plant it. I had the hole ready and everything, and I saw my young daughter looking out the window at what I was doing, and I asked her to come out, and we got in there and got our hands dirty. And just as we were tapping down the soil, I said, we have to have a name. And without a thought, she came out with Charlie. We've got this policy that you don't go and buy things to make more things. You've got to use what we've got lying around. And so kids have made things. Simone and I have made things. It's just been a part of the family process and a part of getting kids and ourselves out of the house and out into the garden.
Peter and his team have done an amazing job here. A wonderfully welcoming family garden, but at the heart of that is really strong design. And a little dash of fun!
We've been looking at some of the top landscape architecture projects in Victoria and Tasmania for the year. And now our winning project.
The Cranbourne Botanic Garden is something that all Australians should be extremely proud of. The vision, the foresight that's gone into planning something like this is huge, and it really is putting us on the world stage for design.
This is a landscape that obviously encapsulates a lot of the Australian landscapes. We've got, from the desert to the water to all the colours that we see in Australia on the scale of 25 hectares. It's done a fantastic job of encapsulating everything. I definitely feel this is a front runner for the final episode in the series.
This is landscape architecture on a huge scale. So Lisa, where do you begin with a project of this size?
It's a great question. So effectively, over 20 years ago in 1995, the client came to us with a brief about wanting to create an Australian native botanic garden. And for us it was about pulling together our key collaborators and working out, well, how do you showcase these things? And we wanted to make sure it wasn't a replication of the Australian landscape, because that's not useful for anybody, but rather a sculptural and artistic interpretation of that. Basically, we've structured the visitor journey in terms of water. And so as you journey through the garden, you come from the arid absence of water, and slowly the water starts to appear in the rock pool waterway and then becomes abundant further through the rest of the gardens. We had a lot of collaborators on our team, and in this instance we had an artist who actually came and designed this piece specifically for this purpose. And the water, as you can see, flows really gently all the way down through to the lake at the other end. And the kids just love to get in here and play around in it and explore the water elements.
Well, Chris, you must be really pleased with this.
We're thrilled. I mean, we set the design as a really difficult task, 15 hectares, an old sand mine site, to turn into a garden that celebrates Australia's flora and landscape.
And of course, not just about the large scale, you've also got these great display gardens.
This is a series of gardens that really shows plants that you can get in nurseries and how to use them in creative new ways in Australian home gardens.
And Paul, you brought your expertise in plant knowledge to this project.
Yes, here we are at the Weird and Wonderful Garden, which the clever design way with these huge big stones. We have a lot of microclimates, and you've got places that are exceedingly hot and exceedingly cool. So we can grow things from the Northern Territory, Central Australia, and the highlands in Tasmania and coastal Australia as well. All one thing juxtaposed against another. So that makes it weird, and it certainly makes it wonderful.
That's right. This is a perfect example of how landscape architecture can combine beautiful artistic design with a scientific purpose to create something wonderful for everyone.
Next week on Australia by Design Landscapes, we count down the top landscape architecture projects for the year in Western Australia.